Hello, welcome to the meat shop. Thanks for clicking on. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to make an emulsified sausage. What is an emulsified sausage, the equipment you need, the characteristics of it, and all the things like that. So, if you find that interesting or valuable, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And without any further ado, let's dive into making an emulsified sausage. All right, like I said in the introduction, thank you very much for clicking on and watching this. We're going to go over what is and how to make an emulsified sausage. Now, what is an emulsified sausage? It's things like hot dogs, bolognas, those very finely textured sausages, frankfurters, European wieners, things like that is what you've probably seen before that is a sausage emulsion. So what that is basically it's a very, very finely chopped final product, and it's technically not an actual emulsion. Like homogenized milk, I think, is an emulsion where the two liquids are suspended in one another. What we're going to do today is we're going to finely chop the lean meat so fine that the protein extraction that we normally get when we mix sausage is going to encapsulate all the little fat particles. So we're also going to cut the fat up very small and the protein up very small. And the protein's going to wrap itself around every little fat module, so you can no longer distinguish between the lean and the fat, unlike in other sausages you've maybe made at home in your grinder. Now, why this is a much less popular style of making sausage in North America for sure compared to Europe, but even less popular with home-based sausage makers. Most home sausage makers don't make these type of sausage because you need what is called a bowl cutter. Can you see that back there? We're going to get up close to it anyways. Or some sort of high-powered blender like a RoboCoupe or a Hobart chopper, and they're very expensive. I have shopped around and I've seen some on the market that do maybe 5-pound batches or so for about $2,000 to $3,000, which is a lot more expensive than one of these grinders. I know at most hunting stores you can pick up meat grinders for like $500 to $1,000, and for $1,000 you're getting a pretty high quality tabletop grinder that you and your buddies can make a couple thousand pounds of sausage with in a weekend. Versus a bowl cutter, it takes a lot of time to make a couple thousand pounds. So that's why they're less popular in the Facebook groups and stuff like that. They're a little bit more work, a little bit more money to get up and off the ground. But there's a lot of pros to them too. So in an emulsified sausage, why they're so popular in big industry, because they can afford to buy the big machines, they significantly increase your yield. So as a meat shop owner, that's good because then you kind of produce more volume of sausage. The name of the game in the meat industry is the heavier, the more weight you sell, the more profitable you are. So in these bowl cutters, we're not going to make the most profitable possible sausage today. We're going to make honey bologna today, and we're going to make a really nice, like what I make in my meat shop. I like to make nice, high quality things that my customers come back. I very rarely have complaints about quality in my shop. Sometimes people don't like the salt content or whatever, but it's never chemically or gives them heartburn or anything like that because we use mostly meat ingredients. But in a bowl cutter, it increases the yield since there's so much protein extraction from those protein particles being cut so small, you can get more water in. And with the addition of things like phosphates, that raises the pH, increasing the meat's water holding capacity. And since there's so much protein in there, you can encapsulate more fat. So legal limits in Canada are 30% fat content in a beef sausage and 40% fat content in a pork sausage, which is quite a bit higher than what you could get in a ground product. If you're using your grinder, 25%, you start to struggle with texture issues and making sure that it doesn't render out during the cooking process. Versus this is so well bound, it stays emulsified. You get no fat caps or pooling at the end of your sausages. So those are some of the features of emulsified sausages. That's why big industry uses them. But yeah, let's pull you in, and I'm going to show you the bowl cutter before we get into explaining the process anymore. All right, now I'll give you a little tour of the bowl cutter so you have a bit of an idea what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the machine. Over here, that's a meat grinder, an industrial meat grinder, small scale. This is a small scale bowl cutter. And then this guy you've seen a bunch of times on the channel, that's a tabletop grinder like you're probably used to using. This guy here, what happens is you load this full of meat and it's going to rotate and send the meat through those 3 blades. Those 3 blades are going to spin at a high level of RPM and slowly cut that meat, well, not so slowly, but it's going to cut that meat into finer and finer particles. This one only has 3 blades. The more blades you get on, kind of the faster and more protein extraction you get. I will tell you this one is a actually about as basic a model as you can possibly get. It does not have very many controls. I have the ability to turn my knives on, turn my knives off, start my bowl, and stop my bowl. If you've seen the IFA tour video that I did this May, you'll see the variation in these machines. You can get all sorts of controls, RPM speed, bowl speed, knives cutting forwards, backwards for mixing, and you can get all sorts of bells and whistles, but this is all I could afford. These are expensive machines. I got this one from China, not proud of that, but it's what I could afford to get me going until we can get a better quality North American made one. And it shows. It's got little tiny pits in the bowl and stuff already. It's a relatively new machine. China is not known for its high quality stuff, but you also got a really good deal. One feature you want to look at is, never touch these blades. They are very sharp, sharp as a knife, is the clearance you get between the bowl and your knife. And see there's quite, it doesn't look like much of a gap, but I'll zoom in. But it's probably like 3/8 or a centimeter gap, which doesn't seem like much, but that is quite a bit. Because in this process, as the meat rotates around here, that's going to be battering or chopping the air into our meat block, which is going to warm the meat block up. You guys will see later, temperature is very important in this process, but it also kind of adds air pockets. So it warms the meat up quicker and kind of does a less efficient job of chopping. But that is a very basic bowl cutter. This guy can do a 25-pound batch, and it does make wonderful, wonderful meat products. It opens you up to a whole nother world. Okay, so that's the bowl cutter. You kind of have an idea of what emulsified sausages are and why they make them, but now we'll go into the processing steps. Another reason you probably don't see them made much is because they're kind of intimidating if you're just getting into sausage making, because the steps are a bit more technical. You are required to do it in a certain order at certain temperatures to get an optimal product, because you are trying to get much more fat in, so it is much more important to get optimal protein extraction. Versus if you're making sausage at home, you kind of chop up your trim, or you save the ends off the briskets after you've trimmed it for the barbecue or whatever, and vac pack them and then pull them all out, run them through the grinder, mix up your spices and smoke them. Mix your spices into the meat and smoke it. This one we have to get organized. So what we're going to do is, I have some very lean meat and some pure beef fat. We're going to, and that's another feature I forgot to mention of this Chinese bowl cutter. It doesn't have the capacity, or it's not fast enough, has enough power to put the meat trim directly in there. Good quality bowl cutters, you can put the trim directly in there. If you're a home producer, you're probably going to have to use the processing steps that we use today. So I'm going to grind this up and then put it in there. It'll be easier on the knives and we'll get a better product. Kind of defeats the purpose of a bowl cutter, but that's what we have to work with today. We have the lean meat and the straight fat. Little bit different than making sausages at home, or you kind of have trim that's already got fat in it, or you bought a pork shoulder and it's got all the marbling in it. We're going to chop the lean meat first to maximize protein extraction. We're going to use quite a bit of ice to keep the meat cold so it can chop for longer. We're going to add salt, cure, phosphates right off the bat to optimize protein extraction. And then at a certain temperature, we're going to add the straight fat. So our batch of honey bologna today is going to be 10 pounds. 8.3 pounds of it is this lean meat. And in your lean meat, even if you have it as lean as possible, you have to add 5% for hidden fat. So that's fat in the muscle that you don't see, marbling, things like that. So 3.8 kgs or 8.3 pounds. I'm gonna try and do it both in metric and imperial for my American friends, is the lean meat content. It's 81%. The fat is 0.85 kgs, 1.8 pounds, which is 19%. So you'd think, oh, we have 19% fat in the end product. No, we have to add that 5 hidden percent. So the total fat of this product is going to be 24 plus or minus a few percent, because I'm eyeballing a little bit. Total batch, 4.6 kgs, 10 pounds. I'm going to grind it through in preparation for the bowl cutter. Okay, I got this all chopped up, ready to go through the grinder. I just had some top sirloin trim kicking around we cut steaks for restaurants. And so all the end little steaks that aren't quite the right portion and stuff is what we're gonna make it out of. But I would like a little bit leaner trim. But so there you go, that's kind of what the trim looks like. And that's how why you should account for the hidden fat. The hidden fat on this one's probably closer to 10. So our end product actually is gonna be pretty close to that legal limit, 30% on this one. But it's just a home-based sausage, and fat doesn't mean bad quality necessarily, especially when it's this nice back fat like you would get off outside fat off a sirloin. So run that through the grinder. I know sometimes I get some grief for videos being long-winded, but in this one, I'm really trying to lay out all the steps for you guys so that if someone watching this really wants to understand how hot dogs are made, or you own a small shop, or you want to get into this at home, you know exactly how to do it, what steps go into it, and maybe where you'll have some hiccups in your processing and what your end product will look like. So yes, it's going to be a little bit longer, a little technical video, but it's so that you can understand the process thoroughly. The meat is now ground up into 2 piles, lean and fat. It was semi-frozen when I put it through the grinder. And as you know, if you're interested in sausage making, keeping your meat very cold is important, but it's even more important in making emulsified sausages because the friction from those blades is gonna heat our meat up very quickly above the danger zone, 5 degrees Celsius, 41 degrees Fahrenheit. So as I explain the processing steps that we're going to take when using the bowl cutter, I'm gonna pop these in the freezer again till they're nice and frosty before we stick them in. All right, I'm gonna go through the steps very quickly so you don't have to hear me talking over the machine and you understand what we're doing as it happens. I'm also gonna give you the instructions again while we're doing it. So step number 1 is we're gonna put the lean meat in here to chop for a few rounds so it's nice and evenly spread out in the bowl. Then we will add the salt, the phosphate, the cure accelerator for a few dry rounds. Salt helps extract the protein out of the meat. So once that's evenly dispersed, a few dry rounds, we'll put in 90% of the ice. This will bring the temperature down while we're extracting protein out of the meat. We will chop with those ingredients and 90% of the ice until it hits 7 degrees Celsius, 44.5 degrees Fahrenheit. At that stage, we're going to add the fat, which will be very cold because it'll come out of the freezer, with the last 10% of the ice. That will allow the fat to get chopped up in the very fine particles and encapsulated by the protein we have extracted. We will also add the spices at this step and chop until we hit 13 degrees Celsius, 55.5 degrees Fahrenheit, which is above the danger zone. We're gonna take it out of the bowl cutter, stuff it into sausage casings, and then you can either smoke your bologna or poach it. I'm gonna poach mine in plastic casings today. let's do it. I forgot to read out the ingredients to you guys. I know some of you like that. So we're gonna add salt at 15 grams per kilogram, sodium erythorbate at 0.5 gram per kilogram, Cure number 1 at 3 grams per kilogram, and phosphates at 3 grams per kilogram. That's what we're gonna add first to the lean meat. Later, to the fat and meat together, the spice portion of this is going to be white pepper at 2.5 grams per kilogram, sugar at 3 grams per kilogram, paprika at 1.5 grams per kilogram, allspice, nutmeg, and onion powder at 1 gram per kilogram, ice at 155 grams per kilogram, which is 15%. Normally emulsified sausages are 20, but we have to account for the honey. The honey is 45 grams per kilogram, so there's going to be 200 grams per kilogram of liquid total, 20% total for this batch. I also am making a program that I'm trying to figure out how to get online to you guys, where you can just punch in the weight you have here and it'll give it to you either in kilograms or pounds. So if you guys are interested in that, keep an eye out for it in the future. It's something I'm working on with all the exact steps for every sausage below. So now let's get that meat in there. Additional pieces of equipment you'll want to get is a scraper for scraping it off the side of the bowl, and you'll need a thermometer at this step. I have lost Red Roy. Roy from Oregon sent me up a really nice Thermapen. I didn't lose it. It got dropped in water and got wrecked. So we're down to the old thermometers, but close the lid. It's got safety features. You won't be able to start it while the lid's up. You have to start the knives first. I got my DeWalt earplugs in because it is loud. That bowl started. So you want to be pretty organized as you're doing this. I have all the spices pre-weighed out, ready to go. That's a few dry rounds. Salt, phosphate, cure accelerator. We're going to let that go for a few dry rounds. You do want to be spreading it out with this so you don't get any lumps around the knife. 90% of the ice, I just eyeball it. Hang on to this. You don't want to drop it. It will get shredded into your meat. You can tie a string around it to your wrist. The temperature of the meat right now is at 0 degrees. So now that it has the salt and the ice, we're going to chop it till it hits 7. You want to lift it off of the side of the bowl to make sure that it is passing through the blades. The meat is at 7.8. Time to add the fat and the rest of the ice. Now, before I added those spices, you had what was called a base cured emulsion. You could have took that and went any direction with it, When I added these spices to it, it became bologna. Check your meat often. It's already at 11. It's getting very close to 13, 55.5. So now I lift this lid. And just for the last couple revolutions, I want to get anything up here because sometimes you get untextured or the bowl doesn't do a super efficient job of chopping up in this, whatever you'd call it, like knife guard or knife house. And need a little bit of spices in there. Scoop them up. Make sure they get in the meat batter. And we'll just do those last couple rounds till it hits 13, 55.5. Okay, we've hit 13, 55.5. Full stop. Knife stop. There we go. I'll show you how I unload that in a minute, but I just wanted to mention, I forgot to talk about a base emulsion. So after we've added the salt and the lean has chopped, and we added the ice and the fat has chopped, that's called a base emulsion. So you can go any direction from there. You have a cured base emulsion and a fresh base emulsion. A fresh base emulsion has no cure in it. So that's a sausage that has to be poached or fried or grilled like a Weisswurst or a sausage of that category. Versus a base cured emulsion is something that has cure in it and is going to go to the smokehouse or like a bologna or a hot dog. But it's basically the addition of the spices then categorizes the sausage. So I'll show you how I take this out though to make it easier than scooping. Start up our bowl again. Use the bowl to your advantage. It's just a little quicker way of scooping it out. You'll still have to get under that knife housing and scoop it out. You want to make sure the emergency stop's on, just in case there is stops. And at this stage, don't accidentally rub your knuckles up against that knife because it is sharp. And so just take a look at how finely textured that is. It looks like a paste or a pudding or a cake batter or something like that. That is wonderful. It's going to make nice textured bologna in the end. So I'm just going to pop this in the fridge and show you guys a little trick that will save you lots of time. Okay, I usually do this part when the camera's off so I don't bore you guys to death. But we all know in sausage making, cleanup is the most important part of sausage making. And I highly suggest when you're done with the bowl cutter, you get it at it right away. Because, you know, other things like if you're making sausage with your buddies, maybe there's someone on sink dishes or you leave the grinder till everything's done and do all the dishes at once. This will get very sticky because there's so much protein extraction. It'll be very hard to clean out in the end. So hit it right away. Rinse her off really thoroughly. Try not to get my scale in the background. Try not to spray your controls. Okay, so I take it to about there, but as you can see, there's all these difficult things to clean, like those little spaces in between each crack. There's a little lip under there. So what we'll do is we'll now get our soaper, foam the heck out of it. Fill the bowl up with water. Once the bowl is filled up with soap and water, let her clean herself for a little bit. Once it's done this for a little while, I'm going to give it a good scrub and sanitize. So we always use the 5-step cleanup method. Rinse the bulk of the contaminants or meat off, lather with soap, scrub, spray and remove anything that's left, and sanitize. 5-step cleanup. And a couple minutes later, we have us a nice clean bowl cutter. No meat anywheres. Do it as soon as you're done with it. Takes a couple minutes and it will save you a lot of time. There's no difference in the stuffing process for an emulsified sausage. The name of the game is still the same. Pack it in there as tight as you can to try and get as many air pockets out as possible. If your plunger has a little air release, it is nice because in an ideal emulsified sausage, you have a single texture with no air pockets all the way through. I will say you do want to stuff and use cook/smoke your emulsification within a couple days because the bind will break. There's so much fat in this that the protein the connection points are very small and they will release over time. So you do want to use it within a couple days. Otherwise you will get fat caps in your sausages potentially. The bind will break. I have these big stereotypical red bologna casings. One thing about emulsified sausages that's on their downfall list is they are a little bit messier. You get very sticky meat everywhere, but we want to get this filled nice and tight. So I'm squeezing tightly with my left hand and stuffing with my right hand, letting air out behind my hand to try and improve the final sausage's texture. If you have a clipper, you can use a clipper. I have a clipper, I'm not going to use it, so you guys know you can get away with using string. Just give it a good double knot. If you are concerned, do a double knot. Okay, we have 2 emulsified bologna chubs, honey bologna chubs, that I'm going to put into my sous vide cooking contraption. I use this often. It is awesome. It is the most consistent way to cook sausages. I'm not worried about the ingredients or flavor leaking out of this since it's a plastic casing. I'm also going to cook in this today because it's the middle of July. It's going to be about 30 degrees Celsius out. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, I'm sorry. 80 maybe? So I don't want to heat my shop up and use the smoker. You could have put these in fibrous casings if you wanted a smoky flavor in your bologna. In they go. I'm just going to get a little weight to keep them submerged. There we go, it's all set up. The red ring means it's still coming up to temperature. The target temperature is 78 degrees Celsius, 172 degrees Fahrenheit until the internal temperature hits 160. They are fully cooked. 160, 71 degrees Celsius. Check them in a while. All right, I came in the meat shop and this little guy was singing at me. I've overcooked them just a little bit, but that's okay. We'll pop them out of there. There they go, to chill out. Here we are with our finished product. The bologna, they're nice and plump. They got the cold water bath and then pop them in the cooler overnight. And we'll slice into them and get a look at our final product, the fruit of our labors. As you can see, no bursting or product waste out the bottom, so you can get away with just doing a string. Let's just dive right into the middle of this guy. There you go. A pretty uniform in texture looking sausage, if you ask me. That is what a sausage emulsion can produce. If I had a higher quality stuffer, we would have got rid of those little air pockets. It's hard to do that with a manual stuffer, but there we go. Now you guys know how to make emulsified sausages. Let's try a bite. And I'll also nip the end off here to show you guys that there's no fat pooling. So we got really good protein extraction. Now, just give it a little try and review it for you guys, even though I've made this lots of times. I know what we're getting into. Show you a bit of the texture feature. Peel that casing off. Doesn't fall apart. Rips apart. Got really nice bind. Tender and smooth. And sweet from that honey. There you guys go. Hopefully you found some value in the video, how to make emulsified sausages. Hopefully you learned something. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you're feeling really generous, you can share this video somewhere as relevant. And if you're interested in that program where I list all the ingredients, you can punch it in pounds or kilograms. I have about 120 something recipes I was thinking about doing that for. Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thanks again for watching. Take care.